What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, it's Aaron Rodgers watch week 2, and things have changed. Price tags have adjusted. Teams in the running have changed spots, added to, almost removed some. And as we sit here today, we remain in the darkness with Aaron Rodgers. We're diving into everything we know, everything that's changed over the weekend, a new name and a growing belief that the Pittsburgh Steelers might be targeting a rookie in the first round. Meanwhile, moves were made last night. We'll address, and big headlines popped up throughout the weekend here in the city of Pittsburgh. It's been a beautiful one. The weather has officially turned, although it's supposed to be like 40 degrees next week, but that's okay. It's okay. One and done. I say it every time. We live in Pennsylvania. You got to push it through. How you feeling, my friend? Glad to be back after a long weekend.
Yeah, this is probably the most tame St. Patrick's Day weekend I have had in multiple years. Wearing my green today for anybody who continuously wants to celebrate throughout the weekend, didn't have enough throughout the weekend. But no, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready for some quarterback news now that we're entering week 2 of Aaron Rodgers watch. At least, a resolution, even if it's not to come to the Steelers, a resolution would be nice.
Do you think we're going to get a resolution this week as we enter week 2?
Listen, we are on Rodgers time, as I've coined over the last week. So I don't think anybody can predict when he's going to make a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I don't foresee it coming today, tomorrow. I have no idea. It doesn't seem to be anything when it comes to the teams outside of maybe Minnesota. We'll talk about that here in a second, but the rest of it is plain and simple. It's laid out right in front of him, me, you, and everybody else. This is the offer. These are the offers. These are the teams you get to pick from. Pick one. Maybe go into retirement, but I don't know. Things will change. Things will heat up. New reports will come out of different places, and you have to dive into where those reports are coming from. We're going to dive into Aaron Rodgers watch and a wild weekend and what's to come here in week 2. We got some news and notes to get through. We'll start with myself here as the biggest news and notes of the weekend. I want to give a quick shout out. I don't even know the name of this dentistry, to be honest with you. What I do know is Dr. Sam hooked me up big time, because any of you who follow me on Twitter, well, something happened over the weekend. Decided that my tooth was going to fall out on Saturday evening. Looked real pretty. Don't get me wrong. My wife was a big fan. She had a great time making fun of me for a couple of days. And as you can tell, we're sitting here today, full tooth. We're rocking and rolling. I was a little nervous. I walked into Saturday night. I'll tell you the whole story here. I bit into a buffalo chicken wrap, pulled out, decided tooth was no longer there. Said, all right, this is awesome. I chipped this tooth as a child, chipped both my front teeth as a kid, about a week apart. Got one fixed, flipped off my porch, chipped one tooth, got it fixed. Within 48 hours of getting that tooth fixed, my brother decided to kick my butt, and I went straight headfirst into a pole, chipped the other tooth. My mom hated me. Got that one fixed. The doctors told me one day these are going to fall out. Well, Saturday, eating a buffalo chicken wrap was the day that it decided to fall out. I went into straight panic mode because I don't know when Aaron Rodgers watch ends, but I do not want to do the Aaron Rodgers comes to Pittsburgh video with half a tooth. That's where my mind immediately went. I ordered fake teeth off of Amazon. You could get like molds of teeth, and I ordered one and said, screw it. This is what we're doing here. If need be, this is how we're going to look on Monday morning. And I found a dentist that I don't believe was open on Sunday, but I'm pretty sure that his dentist office number was his cell phone, and called me back at about 7:15 in the morning and said, hey, I could get you, come in at 2:00. I walked in, no words were exchanged. I barely told this guy my name, laid down, got a tooth, stood up. He said, we take all major credit cards. I said, here you go. And we got a tooth. So shout out to Dr. Sam, man. Seemed like a good guy. Maybe I'll be back. I don't know. I don't have a dentist currently in Pittsburgh. So we'll make that work. I had a dentist, dude. It was so busy that you could only get scheduled. I walked in there, I went in for a cleaning, got the top half of my teeth cleaned. They told me I'd have to come back to do the bottom half because they didn't have enough time. They could only schedule me out 6 months in advance. I said, I'm good. We're done. I said, we're done. So shout out Dr. Sam. That's how my weekend went, but we're here. Full tooth, looking good, feeling good, feeling good. What else we got, I guess?
I mean, listen, before we get off the tooth thing, I was really looking forward to a heavily lisped what is up Steelers Nation, because that's a lot of going on. Without a front tooth, I think it would have been an all-time kickoff to the show.
It was my last name's Strackbine, obviously, and you can't just say that. Nobody knows how to spell it, so you have to spell it out. So as people were asking me, as I was trying to call dentists, it was I can't even imitate it. That's how bad it was, and I was like, it's not going to work. So we're here again. Shout out Dr. Sam, man. I'm feeling brand new this morning but you're constantly touching it, waiting for it to fall out. Constantly.
Oh yeah. Well, we're glad that you are full teeth, ready to go for Aaron Rodgers watch. But before we get into that, let's talk about a couple news and notes from over the weekend. Former Pittsburgh Steelers defensive lineman Larry Ogunjobi is expected to be suspended for the first 6 games of next season, announced Bills GM Brandon Beane over the weekend. Ogunjobi apparently violated the league's performance-enhancing drugs policy, and according to Alex Brasky of Batavia Daily News, the Bills were unaware of this when they signed him in free agency last week.
You got to wonder if the Steelers were aware of it, and this is why they decided to move on. I have no idea. What I do know is that's a tough one for Larry O. That's a tough one for Larry O at 30 years old. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, avoided a massive hit that you probably didn't have a plan to fix, and most likely would have ended Larry O's career in Pittsburgh either way. But now at least it happens to where it works out in Larry's favor. He's on a team. He's ready to go. He's getting paid, even if he's not getting paid for 6 weeks out of the season. If it happened in Pittsburgh, he probably would have gotten released, would have had to spend that 6 weeks off of a roster, and then hope at 30 years old he was going to sign somewhere in week 7, which, don't get me wrong, probably would have had some candidates. Wouldn't have had as many strong candidates. I don't think would have been viewed as a guy who's coming in there to be a starter like he most likely is in Buffalo. It works out for his favor for sure. He gets to now have the whole summer to compete and be ready to go. I just feel like for Larry O, dude, he lucked out on this one. You got to wonder if the Steelers saw it coming, and major miss, made a positive miss for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah, not the greatest first impression there for Larry O and his new franchise. Somebody else made a very positive first impression on their new franchise, and that is running back Najee Harris, who was introduced to the LA Chargers last week after signing in free agency. He was very complimentary, as you would expect a running back in his new organization to be, but he was particularly complimentary about the facilities. Quote, "It's a great weight room, first of all. Even the facility is all great things. A lot of things that people provide here you can take advantage of. I was telling them it's not like this everywhere, man. This is special right here. It reminded me of college at Alabama, all the resources that we have. So just getting the chance to take advantage of all these opportunities is a blessing." And I was telling them, y'all have a great thing going on right now because it's not like this everywhere. It's just not, man. Yeah. I'm happy to be here. So either the Pittsburgh Steelers should feel some type of way about this, or Antioch High School needs to step it up.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Wow, dude. He double dipped. That was my biggest thing on the situation, is he double dipped to make sure to really reinforce, look, it's not like this everywhere. Now, 2 things here. One, Najee Harris in my head is not smart enough with the media. I mean, Najee's a great dude from everything I've heard. But when it comes to him talking to the media, he's never been able to have a filter strong enough to stop himself from saying things like this. So it's almost as if it wasn't supposed to be a shot at the Steelers. He's just speaking the truth because somebody asked him a question and he's answering that question. Now, it's clearly a shot at the Steelers, but to be very honest with you, the Steelers deserve shots. Nobody's sitting around saying the Steelers have world-class facilities, dude. The Pittsburgh Steelers sign in the middle of the locker room is disgusting. Disgusting. And you're not even allowed to step on it, but they just put a thing around it. Nobody cleaned it. Nobody was like, we should probably make this thing look really good before we stop everybody from stepping on it anymore. I mean, they're constantly being bashed on in the NFLPA report card. I get Art Rooney doesn't care. Their game day locker room is worse than any high school locker room you will go into, hands down. And when it comes to the South Side, there's just nothing you could do. Like, there's just nothing you are sharing a facility with the University of Pittsburgh. They have better facilities than you do, which, don't get me wrong, no NFL team has bad facilities. None. Like, there might be the craziest facilities possible, like Alabama, like Los Angeles, obviously, but no NFL team has inefficient facilities. You know, nobody's walking in there going, oh man, dude, this is so bad that, you know, I'm lucky I don't get injured every season. No, they are top-notch, world-class facilities. However, the Steelers are the much lesser of the group because half of it is taken up by Pitt. They need to get out of there. It's the simplest solution possible. You have to leave. I believe they're going to at some point within the next 5 years. Their lease is up and they'll be gone. And then the report card and Najee Harris, they'll all feel better about the situation. But Najee did take a shot at the Steelers. Let's not act like it wasn't. It was a warranted shot, but let's not act like it wasn't a shot.
Yeah, I'm not sure the intent there was to harm the Steelers in any way, shape, or form. I think with Najee Harris, it's simply like, I don't care what anybody thinks about what I'm saying. I just want to let everybody know that I do like this. And that's what Najee is. He's point blank, right to the matter of fact. Like, this is what I feel.
Yep.
Whatever's on the other end of that, you can imply and you could take whatever you want. But to Najee, it was simple. It was this facility greater than Steelers facility. And that's not surprising in the least.
No, not even a little bit. So shout out LA, shout out Najee. Fun fact about the Pittsburgh Steelers that I learned over the weekend. They statistically have averaged the least yards per carry in the NFL over the last 6 seasons. 4 of those are 1,000-yard rusher Najee Harris. So maybe they need better facilities. Maybe, just maybe, they got to figure out their running game. And I'm glad that they're taking steps towards that. All right, I got one for you. Over the weekend, the Pittsburgh Steelers added to their defensive line. Last night, actually, late night move. They brought in Daniel. Go ahead, you know it. Ekuale, whatever. I apologize, Daniel. From the New England Patriots, a defensive tackle who primarily plays the left defensive end side where Larry Ogunjobi played. Started 16 games for New England last season. I believe he's got 21 starts, maybe 27 starts throughout his NFL career. He's just about 31 years old, and he's been in the league 6-7 seasons at this point, or at least had 6-7 active seasons under his belt in the NFL. I look at him as a rotational piece, and a good one, to be very honest. Like, a guy who contributed last season. He's another Dean Lowry. I like Dean Lowry. I have no issues with Dean Lowry. My thing with Dean Lowry was, why was he not being utilized last season? Why was Isaiah Loudermilk getting the upper hand all the time? Why was he just not able to make it work in Pittsburgh in year 1? I have high expectations for him in year 2. And I think Ekuale comes in here and shares those same expectations. Like, he's a dude that you go out, you draft somebody, most likely round 1, although we'll talk about that in a little bit. And he starts where Larry O was going to start, or at nose tackle, and Keanu Benton starts where Larry O was going to start, depending on who you draft. And then you have reserves of Ekuale, Montravius Adams, Dean Lowry, DeMarvin Leal, Logan Lee, if he makes the roster, and most likely a second draft pick somewhere in that mix. I think the defensive line immediately takes a step forward if that's the case. Like, if that's the group you're looking at, you are much better than Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Larry O, Isaiah Loudermilk, Montravius Adams, and you could say Dean Lowry, but like, it wasn't Dean Lowry. It was just Isaiah Loudermilk across the board, pretty much anywhere that they needed him. I like Isaiah. I think if you brought Isaiah back, it'd be fine as like a really deep reserve piece. But I do think this is the veteran depth that they need. This is a name, like, that's who you're looking for for your depth pieces if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? Are these older veterans who still make impacts and can come off the bench and be reliable? That's who they have now, instead of trying to develop these mid-round rookies and second-year guys that aren't working out, and then they're stuck with them for 5 years because they have to see what they're getting out of them. I think this is a much better move. I think Iguodala is a good signing for a one-year deal. Got no issues with it. I think it's a good beginning to the second wave for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and adds a depth piece that they needed. At the same time, the next piece they need to add is the same position on the offensive side of the ball, because they have no swing tackle. And if you could clear that up, I honestly think that their reserves outside of safety, but I also want to address that, are pretty filled at this point. They're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was the Steelers needed to get somebody, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Iguodala is somebody who, as you mentioned, he started 16 games for the New England Patriots. And I understand last year the Patriots weren't a good football team, but their defense was one of their better parts of that team. So you get a guy that started 16 games for a half-decent defense. If it bumps Keanu Benton into a different role, and into the role that we all want him to be in, then that's perfect. Now, I expect there to be another move to come on the defensive line. But if at the end of the day, all this is, hey, we get to put Keanu Benton back outside and put him in a better position where we think that he's going to succeed more, then it's a net positive. And then anything else you get out of Iguodala is just icing on the cake. So again, absolutely nothing wrong with this move whatsoever. And at minimum, it's helping your defense be shifted into the right positions. At maximum, it's a setup piece for something that's really going to take your defensive line to the next level.
Exactly. Like, that's all you needed. Bridge guys, and that bridge guys that are capable of playing back or front. You know, you need them to be a starter for a little while. Good starter. There you go. You need them to be a depth piece for a little while. Great. There you go. But they needed bridge guys. They haven't had bridge guys. This is a bridge guy, which is, again, like, sets you up in position. Larry O was not a bridge guy. He was a $10 million a year, $13 million a year starter, no matter how you looked at it. Excuse me. This is a bridge option that gives you the ability to really do anything with it. And again, that's what the Steelers needed. Their defense is now pretty complete in my eyes, outside of drafting guys. And again, I still expect that to be in the first round, although we'll dive into Jaxson Dart here in just a minute. I think it's a good move. The last piece that they need on that defense is a safety. And tomorrow I have some names for everybody. Obviously got to talk Aaron Rodgers and Jaxson Dart and everything that developed over the weekend there. But tomorrow, depending on how today goes, I'm trying to find some confirmation on if these guys are still going to be on the market. If they are, then I got some names for everybody to pay attention to. All right, let's talk Aaron Rodgers. Let's talk Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. That's why everybody's here. Everybody's here to talk Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. Aaron Rodgers watch week 2, where it goes, what happened, everything that developed. Well, this is where we currently stand. Nothing has changed for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of things. They remain on the table. Offer is there. They have not pulled that offer. They have not said, screw you. They signed Mason Rudolph to say, hey, this is a good plan B if this has to be our plan B. But to be honest with you, I have had conversations that indicate Mason Rudolph is a plan B, but he's not the plan B. He is not the set in stone plan. Everybody's interpreting that he's the starter. If Aaron says no, that might not be the case. It could be the case, could turn out to be that way, but it is not solidified that he is their chosen one after Aaron Rodgers. There are still other names on the table, and those other names continue to emerge. Russell Wilson's one of them, where he went to both Cleveland and New York. Didn't sign a deal with either of them. Remains a free agent. And questions are arising about whether or not they have interest in Russ and where Russ stands. Well, this is the thing. If Russell Wilson comes back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is still on the table, definitely still on the table, it is going to be for literally nothing. No money. Like, you are taking $2-3 million, $4 million max to come and be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers and just say, We need somebody, dude. Screw it. I also don't know if it guarantees him a starting job or if him and Mason will have to compete for that starting job, although you'd have to imagine Russ is in pole position in that competition if it turned out to be that way. On the Rodgers side of things, Minnesota has become a name, a strong one. And according to The Athletic, who has reported it time and time and time again over the last 3 days, Rodgers wants to go to Minnesota. And Minnesota is somewhat open to Aaron Rodgers becoming their quarterback. Where is that strength? Where does everybody sit? Well, I'll say this. There was an overwhelming sense that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to land Aaron Rodgers 4 days ago. Not that he was going to sign there 4 days ago, but that 4 days ago, there was an overwhelming sense Aaron Rodgers was coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That sense is still very strong, but there are people questioning if the Minnesota Vikings are really going to do this. They're really going to put it on the table to say Aaron Rodgers could be the guy while J.J. McCarthy takes one more year to develop. Now, Aaron Rodgers reportedly wants a 3-year, $100 million deal like Sam Darnold does, which brings up even more questions for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. But two things have become very clear. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now in second place in Aaron Rodgers' mind, which is not good for the Steelers, which is not good at all for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if Minnesota says no, and the Steelers don't come anywhere close to that $100 million, you got to think that there's at least some consideration that the New York Jets, or the Giants, are the way to go for Aaron Rodgers. And he just says, screw it. I'd rather have the money. There's opportunity there. The Steelers aren't winning the Super Bowl, which I think that's how he views this. Like, that's where I think he sees the Minnesota Vikings as a Super Bowl team immediately, and the Steelers as a maybe, but maybe not Super Bowl team. And that, I mean, I don't think holds the leverage that it once did in the NFL. Now, I still think the Steelers are a prime destination spot for free agents, but at the same time, I think Aaron Rodgers is looking at this going, Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, my guy Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson. You just loaded up that offensive line. Defense is fantastic. Why wouldn't I want to go there? Why wouldn't I want to go there to Minnesota? If they say that's the move and they sign him even to a 1-year deal, the Steelers are in a weird spot, and we'll dive into that kind of stuff here in a second. But I will say this, just conversations, the overwhelming sense that it's the Pittsburgh Steelers has calmed. They are still considered the favorites, but it was a guarantee days ago. It was a Justin Fields is gonna resign with the Steelers guarantee a few days ago. It is the New York Jets are showing interest in Justin Fields, where we currently stand with Aaron Rodgers. Is your belief in this situation, is your belief in it fading?
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. Almost. I was going to say, does it not feel like deja vu from a week ago where, listen, Fields is their option. Fields is their guy. Fields is who they want to sign. And then the New York Jets come in and they offer enough money to where Justin Fields says, you know what? That's where I want to go. And they steal the quarterback. They steal the preferred option right from under the Pittsburgh Steelers' nose. And now it's like, okay, Aaron Rodgers is the guy. They're waiting on Rodgers. He's their number one option. He's their preferred option.
Yep.
And then Minnesota comes in and sweeps the rug out from under the Pittsburgh Steelers. The one thing you said there that I vehemently disagree with is you said this doesn't do anything to the fact of the Pittsburgh Steelers being a not nice. What's the word you used? Whatever. Free agent destination.
Desirable.
That's the word I was looking for. Desirable free agent destination. I'm not saying it's not desirable at all. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. And as we always talk about, Mike Tomlin still carries some weight in all of these discussions.
Yep.
But it's not like they're getting passed up on for teams that were just shy of the Super Bowl last year. It's not like they're getting passed up on teams like, oh, it's the history of the Dallas Cowboys or their history of the Steelers. I mean, either way, no, they're getting passed up by a cluster F of a franchise in the New York Jets, especially at the quarterback position. And they're getting passed up by the Minnesota Vikings, who, yeah, they had a great season. They had the coach of the year, but they are a historically losing franchise when it matters the most. If Aaron Rodgers is looking to better his legacy, the Minnesota Vikings don't automatically give that to him. I think what we're seeing here at the most important position in the sport is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are becoming less desirable of a destination by the year. Now, I understand there's still going to be desire there. There's still things that are going in the Steelers' favor, but you can't sit here and tell me that they sit as high as they did in the past whenever they're getting passed up on at the most important position by the New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings.
I agree. I think the Jets has to do with money more than anything else, but I agree with you. I do agree with you. It clear. The cards have been shown. It's clear as day that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not the preferred landing spot for a quarterback that's how we ended up here. That's how there were other names out there. Trevor Lawrence made it very clear. Now I'm good, dog. I'm good. Give me in the fourth worst team in the league, Jacksonville Jaguars, over, I don't even know who my coach is yet, over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was calling without a GM, but it's cool. I'd rather be here than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. So where do they go? That's the question, is if it's not Aaron, and you have to, and Aaron's the next big name to pass him up and say, we're done. We're not coming here. Where do they go next? Jameis was tossed out there. We talked about him on Friday. Wild. Joe Flacco was brought up throughout the weekend by Mike Florio, which again, I think he's just throwing spitballs against the wall, trying to get something to stick here and look good at the end of it. I don't think Joe Flacco's a name. I think they'd put Mason Rudolph over Joe Flacco. Like Russell Wilson to me seems like a name that is still on the board. Still up there. Still, if nobody wants Russ and nobody wants the Steelers, well, if we're 40 and we're not married yet, maybe we just get married. Yeah. That's what it kind of feels like. Then you could go to the NFL draft, and there is, at the same time, in the same shift of Aaron Rodgers becoming less guaranteed to go to the Steelers, a name like Jaxson Dart seems to be rising up the board, and the belief that the Pittsburgh Steelers might actually take a first-round quarterback seems to be growing. And you got to question if it's going to happen. If he's going to, we've talked all offseason that the quarterback class is going to rise at the end. That is what always happens. You do not deny the quarterback position, because there will always be teams out there that are desperate and need a quarterback, and it looks good. It's the most important position on the field. And while you could wait a year for a defensive tackle or a wide receiver, you cannot wait a year for a quarterback. You need to always have a quarterback. Somehow, some way, you need to be able to have confidence that at bare minimum in a test subject, it could work out in your favor. Because you could come up with things and say, well, that wasn't the case that wouldn't be the case with the Tennessee Titans if they don't take Cam Ward. It wasn't the case with the Chicago Bears when they traded back because they had Justin Fields. No, it was the case. They had Justin Fields and they have Will Levis. And they're looking at both of them saying, this isn't Mason Rudolph. This isn't Russell Wilson. There's a shot here. There's a small chance this thing actually works itself out, and we just need to give it one more year. The Steelers are, unfortunately, that desperate team that don't have anything that says or that pulls them back from that quarterback position in the NFL draft. I still think it's defensive tackle. I will make that very clear. I still think it's defensive tackle, but there is a growing belief it's going to be Jaxson Dart in the first round. Look, Jaxson Dart led the NCAA in passing yards last year. He had 26 touchdowns, I think, or 28 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He throws it deep. That's what he loves to do. That's what Ole Miss did all the time, was just chuck it deep, and somebody's got to be down there. Well, it's easy to do that when it's DK Metcalf and George Pickens. I'll say that if you draft a rookie quarterback, you cannot get rid of George Pickens. That is step one. You can't do it. You have to have a competition with Mason Rudolph. That has to be step two in this process. And you better pray that your offensive line is good, really good, because you cannot put him back there and say, do you remember Najee Harris and what we did to him as a rookie running back? That's going to be you, but at quarterback, which is way worse. Those are your three that you need to happen. But to be honest, there was a time where I ruled out a quarterback in the first round. I think that time has passed. And if there is a name, it's Jaxson Dart. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you worried about it being Jaxson Dart?
Jaxson Dart is this year's version of, and I'm not trying to compare the players. I just mean the version of Kenny Pickett, which he's not Kenny Pickett. I think he's better than Kenny Pickett
Definitely.
was.
I agree.
But he's this year's version of Kenny Pickett, which is, I mean, he's not a first-round quarterback, but he's probably going to go in the first round.
Yep.
Last year it was Bo Nix, and we see the two different spectrums that it could go on. It could go Kenny Pickett's way, where everything leading up to the final 2-minute drill, he's an awful quarterback, but in the 2-minute drill, he can get it done. Versus Bo Nix, who went out there and was phenomenal from start to finish for the Denver Broncos last year, got him back into the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. That's the spectrum you're playing on. That's the risk that you are taking by taking Jaxson Dart in the first round. And here's the thing. Is he a first-round quarterback? In my eyes, as a personal opinion, no, he's not. Would the Steelers be, at the very least, mismanaging their assets to take him in the first round over defensive tackle, which I think is a huge need for them, over running back, which is becoming a big need for them? Yeah, I think to a certain extent it still would be. But that's where he's going to go. And if you look at the Steelers quarterback situation, it might be a Kenny Pickett situation where they've shown us in the past, if they need a quarterback, they are not afraid to reach for one in that range from 20 to 23. So, you know, it could be deja vu the second time I get to use that phrase in this and my little edition of French for this podcast. But you know what? I look at him as a better prospect than Kenny was. He played in a more NFL ready offense than Kenny does. That's what Lane Kiffin wants. And if the offensive line can hold up, he's got the arm and he's got the wide receiver talent to just make it work until he's a little bit more polished.
I agree. Just the one alarming factor in this, as you explain that, is that the only tangible, the only factor that is on Kenny Pickett's side right now of why it didn't work was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And who's drafting Jaxson Dart?
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers. This is not Sean Payton.
Oh, I'm not confident in it. I'm not confident in it, but I'm just saying it might be the situation that we're faced with.
I agree. He's got there's a spectrum. It could happen. I think Lane Kiffin's a damn good college coach who knows how to prepare quarterbacks and really anybody else for the NFL. I do think that. I think he runs a very pro-style offense. But I also just think the risk is massive. And I also think you have to be prepared to say Jaxson Dart isn't the answer in 1 year, and we have to go get another quarterback next year. I think that has to be in the realm of possibilities as well, which just puts you in such a dark place. But at the same time, this is a great question. What's worse to come to Cam Hayward and TJ Watt with this season and say, Cam, you got 2 years left in the NFL, okay? TJ, you might have 5. We're going Mason Rudolph this year. Or is it worse to say, we're going to go first-round quarterback. At 21, we're going to go first-round quarterback. What's worse to go to these guys and say, this is your Super Bowl chance, pal? You know what I mean? We're trying to win your ring by the time you leave in 2 years for Cam Hayward.
Funny enough, if it was any other backup level, could start a couple games quarterback, I think it would be clear and obvious that the answer is a first-round quarterback.
Yeah.
But something about Mason, I don't know why, but it feels like especially like Cam and TJ, they really got behind Mason at the end of 2023. So with it being Mason, I think that makes the conversation a little bit more gray than it is black and white if it was anybody else.
I agree, but I still don't think anybody's sitting there going, I don't think Cam's going home going, I'm feeling real good about this one. Feeling really good about this situation. We'll see what happens. Aaron Rodgers' watch continues. Until there's an answer, there is no answer. And we remain in the dark, but it'll come. When? I have no idea. But it'll come. And I got to say, thank you, Aaron. Big props to Aaron, my man, for getting me through what was a very scary 20 hours of no tooth, saying, dude, I swear if you do this, I will be so pissed. So shout out to Aaron Rodgers. All right. With that said, that's everything on our agenda. We're going to finish out the show the same way we do every single day. We're going to answer all of your questions, so make sure you toss them in the chat. We'll get to them before we head out of here. Shout out to all of our members and shout out to all of our super chatters. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you guys. Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. What do we got?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Chris, who says, guys, I am tired of Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. We're drafting our franchise quarterback next year, so I'm fine giving Rudolph a third-round QB and a year to try to earn that spot.
I mean, I don't think there's a point in drafting a third-round quarterback if you're going to go get a quarterback next year. But I agree with you. I think next year is a much better draft for a franchise quarterback. I think the options are very much so there. Big, much less limited, and the potential is sky high with a lot of these guys. So I think that's there. You know, I do think that's there. Now, just pulling the words of Mike Tomlin here, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, you don't need to draft a franchise quarterback in the first round, which could lead you to believe that if they think Jackson Dart or Tyler Shock or Quinn Ewers or Jalen Milroe or Will Howard are totally fine as starting quarterbacks and that they could become franchise quarterbacks, I would not put it past them to draft them. I think the worst situation this offseason is to draft somebody and not play him and just believe that he's the next guy, that he's the next franchise quarterback, because you are now setting yourself up to where it doesn't work. And that is now 2 years before you get to go get your starting quarterback, your franchise quarterback. And that leaves even more questions for the rest of this team. Go do it right now or go do it next offseason, but you got to pick one of the two.
Let's go to everybody's favorite UPS driver, Steven, who says, Omar Khan artist strikes again. Sorry to Larry Ogunjobi.
Shout out Omar Khan, the Khan artist. Shout out Larry O, man. He lucked out on this one, and you got to give him props for that. Larry O was a good dude, always treated me really well with a lot of respect, introduced me to, never going to remember the name of the cookies, but he had a cookie company that would send him cookies like once a year, dude, in a box. You could freeze them for up to a year. Unbelievable. They were like, dude, it was like $200 for a box of cookies, $250, some, and he'd give me one. And like, I'm telling you, like verbally, has it went in my mouth every time. And I knew what was coming. So shout out Larry O.
Let's go back to Chris, who says, I agree that nose tackle is the most pressing spot on the Steelers defense. Although we are good at inside linebacker, I don't know if we're elite at that position. Are there any elite inside linebackers in this year's draft?
No. And to be honest with you, there aren't many elite inside linebackers in the NFL. Like there's or inside linebacker groups. There's Fred Warner, who at one point had Greenlaw, and that's no longer the thing. So you have questions there. There's obviously Roquan Smith, but there's nobody next to Roquan Smith, and that's a major gap for the Baltimore Ravens. I don't really know, unless I'm missing people. There aren't those elite inside linebacker groups these days in the NFL. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a quality 3 that I think works really well. Like I think you could I'd rather have a quality 3 than 2 elite guys that cost a boatload of money, because as important as middle linebacker is, again, there aren't that many guys, so they're really expensive to keep around. In the case of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you could go out and get a defensive tackle. I don't think it needs to be a nose tackle. It could be a defensive tackle. I think that is a game changer for the Pittsburghs. A complete game changer. Like the Steelers' biggest issue over the last couple of years has not been the pass game. As much as everybody points to it, it's the fact that in crucial moments, you could run 140 yards on this team, and there's nothing they're going to do to stop you. Go get some options to stop those moments.
Let's go down to Smooty Booty, who says the name Pittsburgh Steelers has lost all of its aura.
Oh, Nick, looking fresh, my friend. I look at it, I can't disagree with that. I can't. It's been a stale offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is what happens, man. This is what happens when your coach, and I'm going to call Mike Tomlin out for this one. When your coach makes a very awful decision, which is what he did at the quarterback last year, he made a very awful decision, and it comes back to bite you in the ass, and you look terrible for it, and you do nothing to solve it, and you just layer on the fact that it's unacceptable, but you do nothing to change it. Nobody takes accountability for it. Nobody, because that's the thing. If Mike Tomlin came and showed up with shaved head, which I get it, he's bald, but new hat or something, and said, pulled a Nick Sirianni and called out, like, I'm going to fix this. This is what's going to happen. Then, you get some juice back. But instead it was just lack of anything. It was just lack of anything. And because of it, there's a lack of aura. So I agree with you, Smoothie Booty. I agree with you.
Let's go to Egyptian Roughneck, who says, let's be clear, he was never coming here. Even a blind man can see that Rodgers is mimicking Favre's career, and team choices proves more that he is pathetic.
Oh, that's a rough one. I still think there's a pretty good chance that he ends up in Pittsburgh. Again, that chance is fading. The optimism is fading, but I do think there's still a pretty good chance he ends up in Pittsburgh. I mean, but at this point, he's dragged this on long enough where you're just sitting around going, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to believe. I don't know how long you stay optimistic before that optimism runs out. I don't know how long the Pittsburgh Steelers hold on before they say, screw off, we're done, which has to be in the conversation somewhere. Like, it has to be in the conversation that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to look at this one day and say, we're good, dog. We no longer, we're good. We just don't want this in our clubhouse. We're okay. I still think it's there, but you got to start asking these questions.
Let's go down to Rex7, who says Tyler Shuck, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, or nothing.
Oh, I would say the Steelers have interest in 2 out of 3 of those names, Tyler Shuck and Will Howard. I haven't heard much of Kyle McCord surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could just be off base here, and he's just a name that's floating under the radar, which is a possibility. But I have not heard much of him. They do have a lot of interest in Tyler Shuck. They have a lot of interest in Will Howard, despite his combine performance. And I would say both of those guys, if both of those are third round guys, if they're there in the third, then I would imagine they're on the Steelers' radar.
Let's jump down to Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, who says, don't want to say this, but do you think Aaron Rodgers is just playing ego mind games? I know that he wants the money.
I think he does want the money too. I think I think that plays a role in it. I mean, you could look at anything in the past. There were all those. You could look at the Jets and the Jets situation, and remember when Aaron wasn't going to the Jets for $50 million a year. The Pat McAfee show was pounding the table. Aaron was laughing it off like those reports are ridiculous. What did he sign for? $50 million a year for 2 years, 3 years with the New York Jets. I have a hard time believing that he's going to take a team-friendly deal anywhere. I don't think the Steelers are going to offer him a team-friendly deal. I just think it's going to be less than what it would be in New York with the Giants. I don't know if it's mind game. I have no idea what's going on. I have none. I personally think that he really, I believe the Viking stuff only because that's the only one that makes this make sense. Is he is sitting around waiting for the Vikings, and because of it, he's got to look like a jerk in the process. But he's just waiting for the Vikings, and everybody else is trying to ignore that fact. Again, it could be totally off base, and I could just be making excuses for this guy. But in my head, that's the only way that makes him not look like a jerk.
Let's go down to Jay Breezy, who says, if the goal is franchise quarterback in 2026, what is the goal for the 2025 season? Is it a losing season, or is it still a playoff push?
It depends on who you ask, but if you ask anybody in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, it's a playoff push, and it'll remain a playoff push. They won't take a losing season. They will never acknowledge that they want a losing season. They will never want a losing season. Like any fan, anybody could say that's their best move. They will never, ever, ever be looking at it in that light. So the goal for 2025 is a playoff push. Will they get it? I have no idea. I think this is a massive question mark year for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I also think that 2026 could be their franchise quarterback year.
Here's what I'll say, and I've been saying it a lot on the Penguins podcast that we do because it's become commonplace considering where that team is at.
Yeah.
Just a quick reminder to everybody. Players and coaches don't tank seasons. General managers, however, will tank a season.
Yeah,
so
but Omar Khan would never. Omar Khan would. No, he would never. No,
I wouldn't say never. Never say
I
never.
Would say never. If you sat in a room with him for 5 minutes, you'd change your mind. You'd say there's no chance. The Art Rooney, he'd be fired in a minute, in a second, if he tanked a season. Art Rooney would never have it. There's one thing for certain in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. we ain't trying to lose. I promise you that one.
All right, let's go to Egyptian Roughneck, who says, how about the new defensive tackle that we got from the Patriots?
Yeah, Daniel. You're going to have to refresh me again.
I got to bring his name, Ekuale.
Daniel Ekuale. He's a reliable depth guy. That's what I look at him as. Is he's a good bridge piece for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We went real in depth earlier, and that's just what he brings. 16 starts last season from the Patriots to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I truly believe that he's an upgrade over a guy like Isaiah Loudermilk. So he isn't a starter in my eyes, but he is a name that increases the defense, makes it better, adds very reliable depth behind Keanu Benton and whoever they draft, and comes in here as a potential bridge guy if needed. So I'm a big fan of the move, especially if it's cheap. I think it's the smart move for the Steelers.
Let's go to Maddie, who says, what would be your pros and cons of drafting Jaxson Dart, and where do you think we would have to draft to get him?
I think that's still very much so up in the air. There's thoughts that you could sit there at 21, but it would not shock me if Shedeur Sanders goes at 2 to the Cleveland Browns and Jaxson Dart goes at 7 or 6 or whatever to the Las Vegas Raiders, or the New York Giants at 3. Like, nothing would surprise me. Quarterbacks always move. We'll have a better understanding in a month, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And from there we'll see. But for right now, I think it's very up in the air of where Jaxson Dart's going to fall.
Let's go to Marlon, who says, don't you have to put the defensive tackle and running back positions on the back shelf in the first round? Yes, we have needs, but is it more than the need at quarterback?
Again, it just depends on how the quarterback situation shakes itself out, and that includes the draft too. Like, you're not going to draft a 3rd round quarterback in Will Howard at 21. That's ridiculous. And that's, there are lines to be drawn there. If it all works out in their favor and Jaxson Dart's sitting there, or Shedeur Sanders somehow is sitting there at 21, then, there's a real conversation to be had. But you're not going to super reach for a quarterback. And if you land Aaron Rodgers, you're not going to reach for a quarterback at all. So I think that conversation is there to be had. I look at it simply like this. If I'm running the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm much more comfortable with Mason Rudolph than I am almost any other option, because I'd much rather a defensive tackle. Like, I would much rather a defensive tackle. And I think you could make moves, and you could find a running back in the 3rd and a quarterback in the 4th or whatever. And I don't know. I just think the upside there is, I'm taking upside. I'm taking how good could this team be by the time they have a quarterback, not how good can the team be to have a quarterback right now. Like, that's how I view it. And if it's a year from now and you have an elite defense, you're looking pretty freaking good.
Let's go to Marlon's second question here. At some point, don't we have to kick the quote win now mentality? We all know that's why they've been where they've been the last 3 to 4 years.
Oh, 100%. And that goes right to what Nick just said about the GM's tanking. Like, it's wild that a fan base can acknowledge, and everybody else on the outside can acknowledge, where the Pittsburgh Steelers' flaw is, and that it's that they're very okay with just winning. I mean, I've talked to people. I have had conversations. I'm not saying with sources, but just with people around the league multiple times this offseason, where the phrase winning a playoff game has been brought up. Like, it's been used so many times as like a benchmark for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, why is winning a playoff game all you're looking to do? If you're not competing for a Super Bowl, who cares if you win a playoff game? Like, you know what I mean? Is everybody just going to be okay with it? Like, is that just what's going to happen? Is you beat the Houston Texans in round 1 and you lose by 30 to the Bills in the second round, and everybody's supposed to be like, we did it, guys. There it is. We broke it. We're back. No, I think that's, it's easy to acknowledge that pain is necessary for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they will not throw it out the window. They will not throw that win now mentality, which is why they're where they're at. It is why it goes a billion ways. It's a billion different situations. It's why Justin Fields never got his job back last season. is because the Steelers were determined to win now, and Mike Tomlin was convinced that's what was needed. It's why Mike Tomlin would never be on the hot seat, because Mike Tomlin wins football games, and Art Rooney knows that. It's why, Kevin Colbert wasn't replaced by some big fancy outside GM. He was replaced by Omar Khan, who I think is very deserving of the job, but fully understands the situation that the Pittsburgh Steelers always need to be in, and you have to get them there. It's why you overreact and go get DK Metcalf a year late on the wide receiver situation. It's because they are always in win now mode. It just fogs everything. Like, it makes everything so confusing when you break it down and look at it from a more of a macro stance.
Let's go to Steven, who says, Noah, with all of these signings so far, where does your current mock draft sit?
That's a great question, to be honest. I'm kind of like trying to wait out the Aaron Rodgers thing. I'm very much so still defensive tackle in the first round. That's where I believe the Steelers are going to go. I don't see that changing unless Aaron Rodgers goes elsewhere. But again, I'm still optimistic that Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Pittsburgh. Like, so much so that I've had dreams over the last couple of days of like meeting Aaron Rodgers and because you have to make a good impression, especially with quarterbacks. And, like, my brother grew up an big Aaron Rodgers fan, so I'd have to make sure that I've mentioned that. And then I also have to like kind of skirt the line of like, dude, I've definitely been talking trash for a little while, but at the same time, like, a lot of respect, winning one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Like, I get it, like, also like Darkness Retreat. I'd probably try it out. Whatever, you want to go hang out in the woods. I just think that's all there, man. And I've had dreams about how I'd skirt around it. So that's how optimistic I am about Aaron Rodgers still being in Pittsburgh. If that's the case, Kenneth Grant is, Walter Nolan is, they are my names to watch in the first round.
Let's go down to Pittsburgh Hornets, who says, if the Steelers take defensive line round 1, who do you think will be the best option available in round 3?
I think it depends on the quarterback situation, but if they're going rookie quarterback, it'll be possibly Jalen Milroe, possibly Tyler Shuck. I think those would be the big names there. Will Howard would also be available, but I don't know if I'd put him over them. Running back wise, maybe Quinshon Judkins. Maybe, I don't think Henderson will be there. I don't think Caleb Williams will be there. Maybe Martinez, I believe his last name is, out of Miami. Maybe Dean Neal if you're going into the 4th round, because you'll be late in the
early
3rd.
For Dylan Sampson, but
yeah, it'll be early for Dylan Sampson. There's a couple of names there, but I would say running back would be my go-to spot in the 3rd round.
Okay, let's go to Egyptian Roughneck, who says, so in Madden on All Pro as of now, I'm 9-2 with Jalen and Kenneth G, both with 700 rushing yards, and Mason is 19-4. Love the dream.
Look it's Kenny G's the man, dude, and if you could get a running game going, 19-4 ain't bad, dude. 19-4 ain't bad going into week, what would that be, 11, 12, week 12, 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It ain't bad. It ain't bad. We'll hope and we'll dream.
We've talked a lot about quarterbacks. Jacob wants to know, have the Steelers had any talks with Carson Wentz? Probably did him good, to spend time under Andy Reid's system.
Yeah, I have not heard anything about Carson Wentz. Doesn't mean that they haven't talked to him. It just means that I haven't heard anything about Carson Wentz. I don't think that's the direction they're looking to go. Again, like, I think Russ is still on their radar. I could see the possibility of Jameis. I could see a 1st-round quarterback. I don't know if Carson Wentz is a name to watch currently. If I hear something, I will obviously tell you guys. But so far, Carson Wentz hasn't been a name that's been on my radar. I don't know if it's on theirs.
Let's go to Dobby Has a Sock, who says, good morning, AST. How are we feeling this glorious Pittsburgh day? Start bench cut, James Harrison, Greg Lloyd, and TJ Watt.
First off, appreciate you, and your name always makes me chuckle, so thank you very much. Start bench cut. I mean, I'm starting TJ Watt. I still think I'm benching James Harrison, and I think I'm cutting Greg Lloyd. Like, and that one's tough too, because he's another legend right there. But if you're going to go longevity, Greg Lloyd's got it. he's going to win that one. But if you're just going like impact in a short amount of time, I mean, James Harrison was unbelievable. That one's tough though. James and Lloyd are very tough in this one. TJ is my start though. There is no outside linebacker you're going to name for me that TJ would not start over.
All right, let's go to Tyler Dotts, who says, do you think it's realistic that the Steelers trade the 21st overall pick to the Bears and get back 39 and 41?
I don't know how realistic it is. The Steelers don't tend to trade back. Could be on their radar. Could be a situation that presents itself. I mean, 39 is a pretty deep way to go. There'd have to be a lot of names available. But for 39 and 41, it depends on who's there. Depends on what the Bears are coming up to get. It depends on what the Steelers are falling back to be okay with. I don't know how realistic it is where we stand right now. I would say that if the stars align and there's some crazy wide receiver there or something that they just have their eyes on, maybe. But I'm not going to, I can't say for certainty that would happen right now.
All right, let's go to Dalton, who says, who would you prefer to start for the Steelers in 2025? Russell Wilson, Mason Rudolph, or a rookie quarterback that the Steelers pick in rounds 3 to 5?
I didn't read that question until as you were reading it. And when I saw rounds 3 to 5, brutal. My preferred starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025 is Mason Rudolph. That's where we stand. I just think Russ is so limited that who cares, and everybody's going to bring up DK and George are deep threats. Yeah, I get it. I fully understand that, but to be very honest with you, I want Pat Freiermuth to be heavily involved in the offense. I want Calvin Austin to get utilized. I want Jaylen Warren to be utilized in the pass game. I want so much more than deep shots, and Russ only brings deep shots. So I'd go Mason in this situation, and I would avoid a quarterback in rounds 3 to 5. I don't think they're going to, but I would if I was them.
Let's go to King Abe, who says, what do you guys think about trading for Joe Milton for a late round pick?
Yeah, I think it'd be great. But to be honest, I have heard that there is no market for Joe Milton right now, and nothing has changed over the weekend. There's just not enough teams calling, if any teams calling for Joe Milton. Nobody's offered anything significant that's worth talking about. So I just don't know if the Steelers have any interest in him. I think that Joe Milton would be a 4th round pick in this draft, somewhere in that neighborhood, which would be great. But I just said I don't think I'd draft a 3rd through 5th round quarterback. I think Joe Milton's a great name. I think if you want to go get him to sit behind Aaron Rodgers and then a year from now make a move for your franchise quarterback and say, we're going to test out Joe Milton and this guy and we're going to see who wins, great. But Joe Milton, in my eyes, is not the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to Greg, who wants to know, at the running back position, is J.K. Dobbins being considered at all in Pittsburgh?
I have not heard J.K. Dobbins' name, but it would not surprise me if the Pittsburgh Steelers go out and add another veteran running back for very cheap. Only because if you now have questions at quarterback and you have to use a potential 1st-round pick on a quarterback, or maybe a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, are you going to draft a running back in the 3rd round, or are you going to draft a running back in the 5th round? And if that's the case, cool. You'd like to have 4 of them, but you'd also like to have 2 guys that you could count on. Now, Kenneth Gainwell, Saquon has said it multiple times that he is a starting quality running back. I mean, he put up starting quality running back numbers against the Pittsburgh Steelers last season. So maybe they view him as a number 2, and you could bring in a Dylan Sampson or something as a number 3. But it would not surprise me if a veteran was added to the Steelers. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me.
Let's finish off with PlayStation Addictions, who wants to know, how do we feel about Cam Scatterbo in this year's draft?
I mean, I don't know. If you're going to draft him in the 7th round, cool. I think he's fun and exciting, and they didn't get Kyle Juszczyk, so maybe he could transform into a fullback. But I think Cam Scatterbo is a boatload of fun to watch. I don't think he's a starting running back in the NFL. I don't even think he's a number 2 in Pittsburgh, but I do think he's a lot of fun to watch where we stand currently.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have been flirting a lot with the potential of, let's use a real fullback. Like last year, all the rage in Latrobe was Jack Coletto. Oh, look how good he's doing. He's getting a lot of attention. He's getting chances. You need a fullback for this offense. Arthur Smith, that's just ingrained in what he can do. And they ended up with Connor Hayward for a third consecutive year playing fullback, despite the fact that he's a tight end. And even at a tight end, he's more so a wideout. So maybe this is the year that they say, you know what? The guy was electric in college. He was so much fun to watch and he tore it up in the college football playoff. Maybe he can come into the NFL and he can transition into a fullback and you can get that diamond in the rough, that Patrick Ricard, that Kyle Juszczyk, where all of a sudden there might only be 3 or 4 guys that are true fullbacks in the league. Maybe Cam Skadbu can be one of those guys.
That's what I'm saying. Like if that's how you want to look at it, great. But if you're going to look at him and say you're our running back too, I just don't think that works for the Steelers. I don't think his body's going to be able to hold up. That's my biggest thing is there's a difference between blocking and taking hits every single down. And that makes me nervous. So if you want to get I love a good fullback. I am all about the fullback position. I was pumped about Kyle Juszczyk. I think it's ridiculous that he went back to the 49ers. And at the same time, if you were going to trade I would have given up a 5th round pick for Jordan Mason and $7 million over 2 years. That would have been awesome. But, it is what it is. I'm all about Cam Skadbu as a fullback in the 7th round.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow as Aaron Rodgers watch continues. Check out si.com for all the updates. Check out here for all the updates. Hopefully we got something by the end of the day, but if not, we'll be back tomorrow. Plenty to talk about that, or plenty to talk about. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.